Joining us now to break down where we stand in the 2020 race is Diamond and Silk, the host of the show Diamond and Silk Chit Chat Live. So the last time we talked, Kamala Harris has been named as the running mate for former Vice President Joe Biden. So we now know the ticket and the two matchups going into the November election, Mike Pence and, of course, President Trump, and Kamala Harris and former Vice President Joe Biden. What is your take on Kamala Harris being added to the ticket?
Listen, I think it's a horrible decision. Kamala Harris does not represent Black women. She does not represent Black people. And in our humble opinion, she's not African American. She's of Indian and Jamaican descent. I think it's a horrible idea. I think that the way that the DNC, Joe Biden and his camp, how they picked the vice P was based on sexism, based on racism, and it just doesn't work. This is identity politics being played at its highest, and it's very offensive, very disrespectful. It's disrespectful to the people that really qualify for this job. The only reason they picked her was because they wanted to call her or put her up as a Black American to appease Black people and to appeal to white left-leaning liberals.
So they implemented affirmative action is what they did.
And it's so sad.
And of course, for the Biden campaign, this is a big part of the strategy, too, is reaching out to Black voters, because the Black voters were actually the people that propelled him through the primaries. I mean, it was really at South Carolina where he turned the corner, because I think it's worth noting that at the very beginning, Joe Biden was trailing far behind in Iowa, in New Hampshire, all those big states. So really, it's now the effort of the campaign to reach out to some of these Black voters. And this overlaps with another development that I think is kind of interesting. Kanye West is considering running for president. He's trying to get on the ballot in a number of different states. And a lot of people think that this may be an effort to take away some of that Black support. So I want to ask you, what do you think about Kanye West running for president?
I have no thoughts about Kanye West. My focus is on President Donald J. Trump and he remaining the 45th president of the United States. I'm going along with somebody that I know that have made changes in this country for the betterment of Americans, including Black America.
That's right.
So I have no thoughts about Kanye West. We wish him well.
That's right. This election is very, very serious. It's based on life or death, as far as I'm concerned, freedom or having your freedom taken away. And so we're focusing on the one man that we know that has the master plan to make America great again.
And I think that's an interesting point because, for example, a lot of Democrats will look back on the 2016 election and say, well, the reason we lost is because of Jill Stein. And I don't think that is exactly right. I mean, I don't think anybody is guaranteed anyone else's vote. If you're not winning over the people who did go for Jill Stein, for example, you're not winning the election. That is the whole point of this race, is to reach out to voters, make sure that they feel represented. And if they don't find a home, then they can go wherever they want. So I think that you're right to say that. I don't think it matters who's on the ticket. I think it matters who the people feel best represents them. So on that front, how can the Trump campaign moving forward really get the messaging that I know you two agree with out to other voters, whether it be the economic impact or what he can do moving forward from this point?
You know, I'm starting to love our president. I love the press conferences that he's doing every day.
Yes.
Put the message out that way. Use the social media to put the message out that way. It's so sad when you look at the left-wing media and how they want to spin a narrative and keep everybody in fear. It's time for people to get out of fear. Let me tell you something about President Donald Trump. He has his finger on the pulse of this nation. He has galvanized this whole country. You want to know how I know? Because the left-wing media don't want to report on it. They want everyone to be saddened, to be somber, but it's not a time to be sad and somber. It's a time to stand up for your liberties and your freedoms and make sure you vote for Donald J. Trump, who wants to protect them and keep them intact.
That's right.
And I think it's one of those things, too, when you look at the media, it's don't necessarily listen to what they say, look at what they do. I mean, they'll talk about these press conferences. And if there was a long time ago where during the coronavirus pandemic, they were not carrying those press conferences, yet they were still getting record type of ratings. I mean, President Trump famously said that they were beating The Bachelor, I believe was the show that he compared it to, or Monday Night Football. And when you talk about the mainstream media, they were saying maybe we shouldn't be airing these at all. And I think that speaks to the idea that they were effective. Now that we see the president returning back to those as well, I think we're once again see that same conversation taking place. So when it comes to the president's outreach efforts, do you fear that maybe because of the coronavirus and because of what's going on, that he won't be able to hold rallies and that could affect the campaign?
Well, let me tell you this. There's something going on. There's an uprising going on in the underground.
That's right.
People are finding other source of other information. When they look at the lies that Kamala Harris, Jim Crow, Joe Biden is spewing,
Yes.
people don't like this here. When you see two people, one wrote a crime bill that to lock black men up and one followed through with it, black people don't like this. Americans
right.
don't like this here. And so they're finding their sources from other places. You know what I love? Americans are starting to dig a little deeper instead of just listening to the mainstream media.
That's right.
What the campaign can continue to do what you all do.
Yep.
Get on your platforms and holler, scream it to the top of your lungs.
That's right.
You need to make sure you vote for President Donald J. Trump. Vote red, remove every Democrat,
That's right.
and vote for Donald J. Trump.
And it's nothing wrong with using what you got to get what you want.
That's right.
And I think you bring up a good point, too. I mean, with the emergence of all these new journalists, independent journalists for that matter, that speaks to exactly what you're talking about. And I think it also speaks to the idea that the average American voter is smarter than a lot of those in the media will give them credit for. They'll see a clip, they'll go look up the full context, they'll do their own research, whereas in the old days, if it wasn't on your TVs that evening, that's the only story that you were going to see. So I think that you're speaking to exactly what's going on. The American people are waking up to what's going on in this country, and they're starting to do a little bit more digging on their own. I think you're exactly right.
That's right.
Diamond and Silk, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No, I was going to say that's exactly right. We're learning how to think outside of what we call the black box and do our own research so that we can see it for ourselves.
And we hear that from our viewers all the time, too. I mean, this whole network is an idea of the emergence of new networks, new independent journalists, whatever it may be. The American people are starting to wake up to that very idea. Diamond and Silk, I appreciate you coming on the show tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.